Chosen one. The biggest goodbye of your life is coming, and the most terrifying part is that it will not announce itself with noise. It will not crash into your world like thunder. It will not come with a final argument, a dramatic confession, or a door slammed in your face. It is already moving in silence. It is hiding inside shorter replies, colder energy, delayed messages, forced smiles, and a presence that still stands near you but no longer feels like home. And I need you to hear this before your heart talks you out of what your spirit already knows. You have less than 30 seconds to recognize this sacred warning before fear pulls you back into the old pattern of chasing, explaining, waiting, and bleeding for something heaven is already removing. This is not just another message. This is not random encouragement. This is a divine interruption. Heaven is watching this moment. Angels are standing at the edge of this transition because something in your life is about to shift. And if you miss the signal, you may keep begging at a door God has already marked closed. You have felt it, haven't you? The atmosphere changed. The warmth faded. The connection that once gave you peace now leaves you anxious, confused, and spiritually drained. You keep telling yourself they are busy, tired, distracted, overwhelmed. But deep inside, beneath every excuse, beneath every prayer you whispered with tears in your eyes, your spirit has been saying one thing: this is ending. Do not panic. Do not collapse. Do not call this abandonment too quickly. The enemy wants you to believe you are being rejected, forgotten, replaced, or punished. But heaven is declaring something far deeper. God is not taking something from you to destroy you. He is pulling you out of a connection that can no longer carry the weight of your next season. This goodbye is not proof that you failed. It is proof that divine protection has entered the room. The Most High is making space for what cannot arrive while your hands are still gripping yesterday. And if you stay until the end, I am going to reveal the hidden key behind this silent goodbye, why it had to happen quietly, why God did not let it explode publicly, and why the very thing that feels like loss may be the first sign of restoration, acceleration, and a blessing you were not emotionally ready to receive before. So do not just watch this as a stranger passing by. If this word is landing in your spirit, mark this moment. Let heaven hear your agreement. Write 777 inches the comments if you know this message found you for a reason. And if your heart is trembling but still willing to obey, declare, I release what God has closed. Like this video only if it truly speaks to the season you are in. Subscribe if you know your spirit needs more than entertainment. It needs confirmation, direction, and strength for what is coming. And share this with one person who has been silently trying to let go. Stay with me, because what comes next will show you why this silence is not rejection. It is divine protection. The silence has changed, and you know it. You may not have the evidence your mind keeps demanding, but your spirit has already recognized the shift. Something in the atmosphere is different. The same person who once made you feel safe now leaves you questioning where you stand. The conversations still happen, but they no longer carry life. The replies still come, but they feel delayed, measured, almost empty. The smile may still appear, but the warmth behind it has faded. And that is why this hurts so deeply, because nothing has fully ended on the outside. Yet something has already begun to die on the inside. I need you to understand this carefully. Not every storm begins with thunder. Some storms begin with distance. Some begin with a strange heaviness in the room. Some begin when you start feeling alone beside someone who used to feel like home. You have been trying to explain it away. You told yourself they are tired. You told yourself they are under pressure. You told yourself you are being too sensitive, too emotional, too afraid of losing what you love. But what if you are not imagining it? What if the uneasiness in your chest is not insecurity, but discernment? What if heaven has been allowing you to feel the shift before the door fully closes, so you would not be destroyed when the truth finally appears? There is a sacred signal hidden in their silence. Do not ignore it. When someone's presence starts draining what it once protected, when peace turns into anxiety, when love begins to feel like begging for crumbs of attention, something deeper is being revealed. This is not the moment to panic. This is the moment to pay attention. God is not asking you to become suspicious of everyone, but He is asking you to stop betraying your own spirit just to keep a connection alive. You have felt the gap widening. You have sensed the emotional winter coming. And deep down, you know, this is not just a mood, not just a misunderstanding, not just a temporary pause. Something is being separated. Something is being exposed. Something is being prepared. Stay with me, because what comes next is the warning. Most people miss the goodbye is not the greatest danger. Chasing what is leaving is. There comes a point where holding on is no longer love. It becomes spiritual danger. It becomes the quiet place where your peace bleeds out while you keep calling it patience. It becomes the battlefield where your heart is exhausted. Your prayers are shaking, and your dignity is being tested by the very thing you are afraid to release. And I need you to hear this with the weight it deserves. The greatest threat right now is not that they may leave you. The greatest threat is that you may abandon yourself trying to keep them. You have already paid too much at the altar of uncertainty. You have given too many explanations to someone who still chooses confusion. You have swallowed too many tears just to keep the peace. You have stayed awake at night, replaying every word, every delay, every cold reply, asking yourself what changed, what you missed, what you could have done differently. But heaven is not asking you to solve a mystery that God has already answered in your spirit. Heaven is asking you to stop negotiating with what is no longer aligned. This is serious because the enemy does not always come with obvious destruction. Sometimes darkness comes disguised as attachment. Sometimes it uses memory to keep you chained. Sometimes it whispers. Try one more time. Send one more message. Explain one more thing. Maybe if you love harder, they will return to who they used to be. But listen carefully, you cannot resurrect a connection God has called to rest. You cannot breathe life into something heaven is removing without losing pieces of yourself in the process. The Lord is not watching you beg and calling it faith. He is not watching you shrink and calling it humility. He is not watching you bleed for someone's half-hearted presence and calling it love. There is a difference between fighting for what God gave you and clinging to what God is taking off you. And this is the line many people miss. They think surrender means weakness. They think letting go means they failed. But sometimes the most powerful act of faith is not holding tighter. Sometimes it is opening your hands while your heart is still breaking and saying, Lord, if you are closing this door, I will not worship what you are removing. The scripture says, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Psalm 37:7. Be still does not mean do nothing. It means stop moving from panic. Stop reaching from fear. Stop chasing from a wounded place. Stillness is spiritual armor. Stillness is obedience when your emotions are screaming. Stillness is the moment you refuse to let rejection become your master. They may never explain the silence. They may never confess what changed. They may never give you the apology your heart deserves. But your freedom cannot depend on their honesty. Your healing cannot wait for their courage. Your destiny cannot remain locked behind someone else's indecision. You were not called to live in the hallway between their affection and their absence. You were called to walk through the divine door God is opening ahead of you. So take your hands off what is leaving. Not with hatred, not with pride, not with bitterness. Release it because your soul is too sacred to keep bleeding in a place heaven has already marked complete. Release it because your future is calling louder than your fear. Release it because the blessing coming toward you requires space. And God will not pour new oil into hands still gripping yesterday. If this word is shaking something awake inside you, type chosen in the comments as a declaration that you will not chase what God is removing. And stay with me, because what comes next will reveal what heaven has been protecting you from in silence. There are things you were not meant to hear in the moment they were spoken. Because if God had allowed you to know everything too early, your heart might have shattered before your spirit was strong enough to stand. There were conversations that happened without you, decisions made in silence, feelings that changed long before anyone admitted it, smiles that covered distance, polite words that hid withdrawal. And while you were praying for clarity, heaven was quietly collecting evidence your eyes could not yet see. This is why you must not call yourself foolish for trusting. You loved with a clean heart. You showed up with sincerity. You believed what they gave you because your spirit was not built for manipulation. But understand, this innocence does not mean blindness forever. God may allow you to miss certain signs for a season, but He will never allow His appointed one to remain trapped in deception when the hour of release has arrived. What was hidden is beginning to rise. What was whispered in darkness is losing its cover. What felt confusing is about to make sense. And no, this revelation is not coming so you can attack them, expose them, or chase them with accusations. That is not the assignment. Heaven is not revealing this to make you bitter. Heaven is revealing this to make you free. Sometimes God does not show you the truth so you can fight. He shows you the truth so you can finally stop fighting for what was already gone. There is a difference, a painful one, a holy one. You may discover that their heart left before their body did. You may realize they had already started building a life emotionally separate from you while you were still trying to protect the bond. You may look back and see the signs, the delayed replies, the missing tenderness, the sudden irritation, the way your pain became an inconvenience instead of something they cared to understand. And when that realization comes, it may feel like fire moving through your chest, but that fire is not here to consume you. It is here to burn away illusion. Let the truth come. Let the veil lift. Let the light enter the room, even if it reveals what you were afraid to see. Because the same God who exposes what was hidden is the God who will cover your heart while you heal. This is not humiliation. This is rescue. And in a moment, I will show you why this goodbye is not punishment at all. It is divine protection wearing the face of loss. This goodbye is not punishment. I know it may feel like punishment because it touches the place in you that still hoped, still prayed, still waited, still believed that maybe one more conversation could repair what has been quietly breaking. But I need you to see this through heaven's eyes, not through the wound. God is not removing them because He enjoys watching you hurt. He is not closing this door because your love was worthless. He is not allowing distance because you failed some hidden test. No, this is divine protection, arriving in a form your emotions do not yet understand. Sometimes protection does not feel like rescue at first. Sometimes it feels like loss. Sometimes it feels like silence. Sometimes it feels like standing in a wilderness with empty hands, asking God why He allowed something you cherish to slip away. But listen closely, the gardener does not prune the branch because he hates the tree. He cuts because he sees what the tree cannot see. He sees where life is being drained. He sees where fruit is being blocked. He sees where something that once looked alive has started stealing strength from what is meant to grow next. And that is what heaven is doing in you. God is cutting away what can no longer nourish your calling, not because it never mattered, not because it was all a mistake, but because its assignment has reached completion. And if it remains past its appointed time, it will no longer be a blessing. It will become a weight. I have seen this in life, and I have felt it too. There are seasons when you pray for God to restore something, but He answers by giving you the strength to release it. At first, that answer feels cruel. You think, Lord, I asked you to bring them closer, not teach me how to survive without them. But later, when your mind becomes clear again, when your peace starts returning, when your prayers no longer feel chained to someone else's behavior, you begin to realize something sacred. God was not ignoring your request. He was answering the deeper cry beneath it. You were asking for love, but heaven was giving you freedom. You were asking for clarity, but heaven was removing confusion. You were asking for peace, and God knew peace could not live in the same place where your spirit kept shrinking. The scripture says, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalm 147:3. That means God does not shame you for hurting. He does not rush you through grief. He does not stand far away while your heart breaks in private. He comes close. He binds what people bruised. He restores what silence damaged. He gathers the pieces you thought you lost while loving someone who could no longer meet you with the same truth. So do not mistake this pain for abandonment. This is the hand of God pulling you back before the fire consumes more than it should. This is the throne of heaven overruling the attachment that tried to outrank your destiny. This is the divine door closing before you could build your future in a room that was never meant to hold your promise. And yes, you may cry. You may miss them. You may still love them. But you must not worship what God is removing. If this word is reaching the part of you that has been quietly breaking, type, I receive it not as a habit, but as agreement with heaven. Let that be your declaration. I may not understand the loss, but I trust the protection. Stay with me, because the next part goes even deeper. God is not only removing a person from your path, He is removing the old version of you that believed you had to beg to be chosen. What is happening right now is deeper than a person leaving your life. Much deeper. This is not only about their silence, their distance, their coldness, or the goodbye you have been sensing in your spirit. This is about the version of you that can no longer survive where God is taking you. The old version of you could endure being half-loved. The old version of you could keep explaining, keep waiting, keep shrinking, keep pretending the emptiness did not hurt. The old version of you could convince yourself that a little attention was enough, that a delayed reply was still love, that emotional confusion was just part of the process. But that version of you is being laid down now, and that is why this feels so heavy. You are not only grieving them, you are grieving who you were when you still believed you had to be chosen by people in order to feel chosen by God. You are grieving the part of you that stayed too long in rooms where your spirit could barely breathe. You are grieving the version of yourself that kept lowering the standard, not because you had no value, but because you were afraid that if you asked for more, you would lose everything. But heaven is interrupting that fear. God is reaching into the deepest place in you and saying, you cannot carry this identity into the next season. This is not destruction. This is transformation. But transformation rarely feels gentle while it is happening. It feels like fire before it feels like freedom. It feels like a furnace before it feels like a crown. It feels like being stripped before you realize you are being clothed in spiritual armor. God is not burning your life down. He is burning away the false attachments, the silent agreements, the emotional chains, and the hidden belief that you must beg to be loved. Think of Jacob in the night, wrestling until daybreak. He did not walk away untouched. He walked away limping, but he also walked away renamed. That limp was not a sign that God had defeated him in cruelty. It was the mark of a divine encounter. It was proof that he had struggled, endured, and stepped into a new identity. And that is what is happening in you. You may leave this season with tears in your eyes, with a scar in your memory, with a tenderness that still aches when certain names are spoken. But you will not leave it the same. The person you are becoming will no longer confuse attachment with assignment. You will no longer call anxiety love. You will no longer mistake emotional crumbs for covenant. You will no longer silence your discernment just because your heart is afraid of being alone. God is raising someone stronger in you. Someone quieter, deeper, wiser, more anchored. Someone who does not need to be chased to feel worthy. Someone who does not need to be explained to be valuable. Someone who can stand before a closed door and still believe heaven has not run out of keys. This is why the goodbye had to come. Not because you were weak, but because you were ready to become stronger. Not because you were rejected, but because you were being reclaimed. Not because your story is ending, but because the blueprint of your destiny requires a version of you that no longer bows to fear. Stay with me, because the next part will show you what you must stop touching immediately if you want your healing to truly begin. Now comes the part that will require more courage than you expected. Stop touching the wound God is trying to close. Stop going back to the same messages looking for a sentence that proves they still care. Stop opening old photos like they are holy evidence that the past can be resurrected. Stop replaying the final conversations, trying to find the exact moment where the warmth disappeared. You are not healing when you keep returning to the place that broke you. You are reopening what heaven is stitching together. And I know this is not easy. There are memories that do not knock before entering. A song plays, and suddenly your chest tightens. A familiar street appears, and your mind pulls you back. A notification lights up your phone, and for 1 second your heart hopes it is them. That is where the battle becomes real, not on the outside, but in the hidden room of your emotions. Because part of you wants freedom, but another part of you is still addicted to the possibility that maybe they will return as the person you once believed they were. But hear this with tenderness and seriousness: you cannot build a new life while secretly worshiping an old season. You cannot ask God for restoration while continuing to feed the attachment that wounded you. You cannot keep bleeding and call it loyalty. There are doors in your heart that must be closed gently, but firmly. Not with hatred, not with drama, not with a cold spirit, with wisdom, with obedience, with the quiet strength of someone who finally understands that peace must be protected. Maybe the closure you are waiting for will never come from their mouth. Maybe they will never explain the silence. Maybe they will never admit what changed. Maybe they will never have the courage to say what your spirit already knows. But your healing cannot remain chained to their confession. Your freedom cannot depend on their honesty. Sometimes the answer is not another conversation. Sometimes the answer is God whispering, "Do not go back there. I already brought you out." So begin small. Delete what keeps dragging you backward. Move what keeps reopening the ache. Change the routine that keeps your heart circling the same mountain. Take a walk without your phone. Write one sentence of truth and read it until your spirit believes it. I am not abandoned. I am being restored. Open scripture. Even if you only have strength for one verse, pray. Even if your prayer is nothing more than, "Lord, help me not return to what you are removing." Heaven honors small obedience when it is born from a broken heart. This is where healing begins, not when the pain disappears, but when you stop giving the pain permission to lead you. If you are ready to stop reopening what God is closing, type, "I choose healing," and stay close, because the next part will show you why your words in this season are not just words, they are seeds for the future heaven is preparing. There is a dangerous silence that comes after someone leaves space in your life. It is the silence where your mind begins to speak against you. It asks questions God never asked. It whispers names heaven never gave you. It says, maybe you were too much. Maybe you were not enough. Maybe they left because something in you was unworthy of staying for. And if you do not interrupt that voice, it will build a prison out of one painful goodbye and call it your identity. This is why your words matter in this season more than you realize. not the words you post for others to see, not the words you use to appear strong, but the words you speak when no one is watching, the words you whisper over yourself in the dark, the words you allow to echo inside your chest when memory rises like a flood. Because after a deep loss, your soul becomes like open soil. Whatever you keep repeating will take root there. If you keep saying, "I was abandoned," abandonment will become the lens through which you see every new door. If you keep saying, "Nothing good stays," fear will stand guard at the entrance of every blessing. If you keep saying, "I always lose what I love," you will begin to expect grief even when heaven is sending restoration. But you are not here to curse the ground God is preparing to bless. You are here to speak life over the empty place. Say it even if your voice trembles, "I am not rejected. I am being redirected." Say it while tears are still drying, "What left my life cannot cancel what God has written over me." Say it when the room feels too quiet, "My future is not buried in who walked away." These are not empty phrases. These are seeds. These are spiritual weapons. These are keys turning inside doors you cannot yet see. The scripture says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." Proverbs 1:8-2:1. That means your mouth can either agree with the wound or agree with heaven. And today, you must choose which kingdom gets your agreement. Do not let heartbreak become a prophet over your life. Do not let absence name your future. Do not let one person's inability to stay become the final word over your worth. Speak over the space they left behind. Speak peace into it. Speak restoration into it. Speak divine provision into it. Speak until the atmosphere in you changes. Speak until your spirit remembers that God has not run out of plans. Keys, doors, people, blessings, or beginnings. Because the space that feels empty right now is not a grave. It is a room being cleared for what carries life. And there is something deeper happening next. God is not only changing what you say about yourself, He is changing who is allowed to stand close enough to influence your voice. Not everyone can stand close to the person God is making you become. That may be hard to accept, because your heart remembers history. Your heart remembers the laughter, the promises, the late-night conversations, the moments when you thought, "This person will always be here." But destiny does not move according to memory. Destiny moves according to alignment. And when your calling begins to rise, when your spirit begins to mature, when heaven starts pulling you into a higher rhythm, some people will no longer be able to walk at the same pace without pulling you backward. This is not always because they are evil. Sometimes they are simply attached to an older version of you. They know how to relate to the you who tolerated confusion. They know how to speak to the you who apologized for having needs. They know how to handle the you who kept the peace by breaking yourself quietly. But they may not know what to do with the version of you who now has boundaries. They may not recognize the version of you who no longer begs for attention. They may feel uncomfortable around the version of you who has stopped shrinking to keep the room calm. And that discomfort is revealing something. God is refining your circle. He is removing the voices that made you doubt your discernment. He is separating you from emotional noise that sounded familiar but never truly fed your spirit. He is making space for people who can walk with honesty, carry peace, speak truth, and honor the weight of what heaven placed inside you. Your next season cannot be built with every old attachment still sitting at the table. Some seats must become empty before the right people can arrive. There are people who were only meant to accompany you through the wilderness, not into the promise. They helped you survive a chapter, but survival is not the same as destiny. A bridge is important, but you do not build your home on a bridge. You cross it. You thank God for what it carried. Then you keep walking. So do not panic when the circle gets smaller. Do not mistake isolation for abandonment. Sometimes heaven clears the room before it reveals the assignment. Sometimes God removes the crowd so you can finally hear the voice that matters. The quiet around you may feel strange now, but it is not empty. It is being purified. The ones who are meant for your next season will not require you to betray your peace to keep them close. They will not make you feel guilty for growing. They will not need you wounded in order to feel powerful. They will recognize the light in you without trying to dim it. They will pour where others only took. They will stand where others drifted. And when they come, you will understand why God did not allow certain people to stay. Now listen closely, because before the blessing fully opens, there is one final test every appointed soul must pass. Can you let go without letting bitterness become your new prison? The final test is not whether they come back. It is not whether they finally admit what they did, explain what changed, or confess the truth your spirit already knew. The final test is whether you can release them without letting bitterness move into the empty space they left behind. Because there is a kind of pain that does not just break the heart, it tries to harden it. It tries to convince you that tenderness was a mistake. Love was weakness. Trust was foolish. And silence is the only safe language left. But you must not let one goodbye turn your soul into a locked room. There will be moments when you want to defend yourself. You will want to tell the whole story. Show the receipts. Explain how much you carried, how long you waited, how deeply you tried. You may hear that your name was spoken in rooms where you were not present. You may sense that people misunderstood your silence and called it pride, when it was really obedience. You may feel tempted to prove that you were not the problem, not the villain, not the one who gave up. But listen, not every accusation deserves access to your voice. Not every room deserves your explanation. Not every person is worthy of hearing the sacred details of what God is healing inside you. There is a higher court than public opinion. There is a throne above every whisper. Heaven knows what happened when nobody clapped for your patience. Heaven saw the nights you cried without posting a word. Heaven saw the times you chose peace when your flesh wanted revenge. And if God has seen it, you do not need to spend your strength begging people to see it too. Forgiveness does not mean you pretend it did not hurt. It does not mean you invite them back into the place they wounded. It does not mean you erase wisdom and call it love. Forgiveness means you refuse to let their actions keep ruling your inner world. It means you hand the pain back to God before it becomes poison in your spirit. It means you say, I will not become cruel because someone mishandled my heart. I will not become cold because someone failed to honor my love. I will not let what they did rewrite who God says I am. So let them go cleanly. Let them leave without building a monument to the wound. Let the door close without setting your whole heart on fire. You are not releasing them because they deserve your peace. You are releasing them because your destiny cannot breathe inside resentment. And now, here is the final secret. I promised you from the beginning, this goodbye is not the grave of your future. It is the doorway to the greatest blessing you have not yet seen. And now I need you to hear the final secret. The goodbye was never the end. It was the doorway. It was the narrow passage between who you were and who God has been preparing you to become. What felt like a loss was actually a divine opening. What felt like silence was heaven protecting your peace. What felt like rejection was the hand of God turning your face away from a place that could no longer carry your promise. You thought something was being taken from you, but heaven was making room around you. Room for clarity. Room for restoration. Room for people who do not make you beg to be valued. Room for a future that does not require you to keep bleeding in order to belong. This is why it had to happen quietly. If it had exploded loudly, your heart might have stayed attached to the drama. If it had ended with a final battle, you might have spent months defending yourself, proving yourself, explaining yourself, reliving every wound in the court of human opinion. But God allowed the separation to move in silence because He was not only closing a door, He was protecting your spirit from unnecessary war. No public collapse. No endless argument. No last performance for someone who already stopped seeing the sacred weight of your heart. Just a quiet removal. A holy separation. A divine shift so precise that one day you will look back and realize heaven was kinder than you understood. Do not be afraid of the empty space. The empty space is not a curse. It is preparation. Before new oil is poured, old vessels must be emptied. Before a kingdom door opens, the hallway often feels lonely. Before the floodgates break open, the ground may feel dry beneath your feet. But dryness is not denial. Waiting is not abandonment. Silence is not absence. God is still moving. Even when you cannot hear the sound of his footsteps, you are going to breathe again. You are going to laugh without forcing it. You are going to pray without their name being the center of every sentence. You are going to wake up one day and realize the ache no longer controls the room. You may still remember, but you will not be ruled by memory. You may still care, but you will not confuse caring with returning. You may still feel tenderness, but tenderness will no longer be a chain around your destiny. The blessing coming toward you will not require you to shrink. It will not demand that you silence your discernment. It will not make you question your worth every night before sleep. What God is preparing will carry peace, not panic. It will carry alignment, not confusion. It will carry honor, not emotional hunger. And when it arrives, you will understand why this goodbye had to come first. You will understand why certain hands had to let go of you before heaven could place the right things into yours. So walk forward. Even if your steps are slow, walk forward with tears still drying on your face. Walk forward without turning your wound into your identity. Walk forward knowing that what left could not cancel what God wrote. This chapter is closing, but your story is not over. The throne of heaven has not forgotten your name. The angels are not weeping over your future. Heaven is not worried about you. Heaven is preparing you. If this word has reached the place in you that has been silently hurting, type Amen as your agreement with heaven. If you believe God is turning this goodbye into restoration, write, I receive it, and share this with one soul who has been trying to let go without anyone knowing how much it hurts. Subscribe if your spirit needs strength for the season ahead, because the next word may be the confirmation God uses to steady your heart. The biggest goodbye is coming quietly, but the greatest blessing is already moving toward you.